We're on to Chapter 2, Section 3. The Articles of Confederation. They were approved on November 15th, 1777, and with this, a firm league of friendship was established amongst the states. And the states also kept its sovereignty, freedom, and independence in every power, jurisdiction, and right, not expressly delegated to the United States in Congress assembled. And it wasn't ratified until March 1st, 1781.
Shays Rebellion.
Governmental structure. The Articles created a Congress made up of the sole body. It was unicameral and allowed each state one vote regardless of population or wealth. Executive and judicial branches weren't created. They were instead taken care of by the Committee of Congress, who had an elected presiding officer.
The powers of Congress. Congress was allowed to make war and peace, send and retrieve ambassadors, make treaties, borrow money and set up a money system, establish post offices, build a navy and an army by asking the states for troops, and settle disputes among the states.
Are you saying these were the powers of the Continental Congress or the powers of Congress under the Constitution?
I think it's the Congress under the Constitution. State obligations.
Under the Articles of Confederation, there weren't able to tax on.
That is correct. In fact, there's a graphic organizer there in that section, which I think is helpful because it identifies what, as we look back, would be considered weaknesses in the government that they tried to remedy via the Constitution.
How'd you know that, Victor?
I read.
State obligations. Under the Articles, states had to treat each other's citizens equally as their own. They must also have faith in the decisions made by other states. And the states were also primarily held accountable for promoting general welfare of the people, as well as being responsible for protecting life and property.
You guys done?
And then we're going to knock it off.
There were also a lot of weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation.
Okay, now I'm confused because you said that last slide highlighted powers granted to Congress under the Constitution, and now you're switching back to an earlier version of the government under the Articles of Confederation covering the weaknesses. I'm just curious what your rationale was for doing that. So did you care to revise your statement on the previous slide? Is that Congress under the Articles of Confederation as a unicameral body, or is that Congress under the Constitution as a bicameral body?
Go back to the previous slide.
Okay. This is a unicameral body.
This one?
The Congress didn't have much power under the Articles, right?
No,
Like,
Not really.
they didn't.
they had to ask to borrow money.
They couldn't tax, they
And
couldn't
then they wouldn't
declare
collect
war.
the
And every state had what?
had their own money, like their own currency.
Oh
and
yeah,
they're
they
just
had
confused.
they couldn't regulate commerce under the articles. They couldn't establish like a bank or.
You couldn't really even pass any legislation because in order to pass laws, everyone had to what?
Agree
Had to agree, had to be unanimous.
And the large states had the same influence that a really small state had because every state
Who
had.
changed it?
One vote.
Okay, keep going, guys. I don't want to slow you down because I know we got to get through some stuff here. But let's just be clear on the Congress was different under the Articles of Confederation versus under the Constitution.
The Articles were seen as weak due to the fact that it didn't allow Congress to the power to tax nor regulate trade. Money was only gained by borrowing from the states, which was a poor source. The money used to the Revolutionary War was borrowed and hadn't been paid off. Financially, states couldn't meet Congress's request. That was due to the fact that, like, during like the Revolutionary War, they were borrowing money from the states, so it created a huge debt, where it fell back on the states too, because they weren't getting their money paid back. So financially, the states couldn't meet the Congress's request, and there was also no enforcement that made the states follow the Articles of Confederation. So it was like they knew the Articles of Confederation were there, but there was nobody enforcing, like making them follow it.
The critical period, 1780s. With constant disagreement about which government should be used, the states often acted only for themselves with no cooperation. They had illegally set up agreements with foreign governments. Financially goods were taxed or sometimes banned between states. Each state created their own currency. Economic chaos eventually led to violent outbreaks. Framers would end up losing land and possession because of the lack of payments made. This caused outrage and led to cases such as Shays' Rebellion.
So why was it critical?
So then, the federal would tax the trade. They were able to do that, or what?
That's that pedal.
What do you mean?
I mean, the Congress, they were able to tax the trade. Because right,
Each
I don't know.
state-
That
each
says that
state
financially good.
Right, mister?
Sometimes banned between states.
No, each different state would tax, like, as though they
Another
were their own
state
country.
Right.
It was between the states then.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like a bunch of, it's like the neighborhood crew got together to take care of the bully, and they all hated the bully, so they got no problem working together. Now the bully's gone, and they start what?
Going against each other.
Fighting amongst themselves. So what might this lead to? Why was it called critical, guys? Why is it the critical
Because
period?
it was time that they needed a new form of government.
Yes.
Because the one they had wasn't as efficient as they thought it would be, and they saw it because all the weakness came up.
This is like the moment that changed it.
Because it could have gone one way, where they've broken up and said, I got nothing to do with you anymore. Or it could go the other way, where they joined together. And Europe was just waiting. They're saying, this is ridiculous. You guys can't govern yourselves. This idea of self-government that was the idea of the social contract theory, John Locke, they said it's nonsense. They believed in Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes, where you needed a really strong government to control these crazy individuals. You need a strong king or dictator. Could they do it? That was the question. And in fact, we were talking about this in AP U.S. history with the Gettysburg Address in 1863. Abraham Lincoln still posed the question, is it still possible for us to be self-governing? You know, we take it for granted. We look back, we're 200 plus years since the Constitution and the new government was formed, and we take it for granted that what? We can engage in self-rule. At that time, it was a radical experiment.
Stronger government. The need for a strong central government was necessary to create financial and political stability. An assembly at Mount Vernon had taken place to settle trade disputes between Maryland and Virginia. With the success of this meeting, Virginia General Assembly called for a meeting with all the states to create a plan in regulating commerce.
Annapolis. The joint meeting took place in Annapolis, Maryland. Only 5 of the 13 states had representatives show, having yet again another convention called later on in hopes of attracting the missing states. The next meeting only had 7 delegates from each state, prompting Congress to call upon the states to send their representatives to the meeting taking place in Philadelphia. And this will be leading into section 4, which talks about the meeting in Philadelphia.